Ron Dermer and the head of the Mossad. Both of them going to the United States, not trying to reach a deal, but according to confirmations from Israel, from Israeli reports too, they are going to the United States to try and thwart the nuclear agreement between the United States and Iran. That's according to Ben Caspit in Ma'ariv, according to a fairly stubborn sources, and he's a very well-known reporter and writer, columnist in Israel. The purpose of the Mossad head Barna and Dermer's trip to Washington is a last-ditch attempt to block a dramatic announcement of an interim agreement between Iran and the United States on the nuclear issue. This could be very substantiated. Why? Because Ron Dermer is the poodle of Benjamin Netanyahu, and the head of the Mossad has proven himself to be a very obedient servant for Benjamin Netanyahu too, despite the fact that there were reports that they were in disagreement in the beginning of the war, and the head of the Mossad wanted to actually end the war alongside the leading figures in the cabinet at the time, and Ren Bar, the head of the Shin Bet, and other senior figures in the Israeli Military Intelligence Directorate. But now he's clearly shifting a position, and the purpose of Netanyahu sending him and Ron Dermer to the United States is to show his poodle, Ron Dermer, who is a yes man for Benjamin Netanyahu, does as he's told, with the head of the Mossad adding the weight of the Israeli Mossad, so that the head of the Mossad can tell the American administration, look, we have substantial information that these people are not going to actually stop enriching uranium, for example. They actually stated at any point that they're going to try and stop enriching uranium. Iran denied that outright, that they're going to stop anything. They said, we will continue enriching uranium. There is no negotiation about us enriching uranium. This is not on the table. The only thing we're ready to talk about in the talks between them and the United States administration is how much, and the fact that we're not going to go to have nuclear weapons. That was the deal. And it isn't just, of course, the reports coming from Israel. The New York Times as well was quoted saying that the United States is actually indeed worried about a possible attack coming from Israel against Iran, something that could hinder the prospect of talks between the United States administration and the Iranian side too. And that's why Donald Trump had this conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu is the man who always led this hawkish lobby and influenced them, the United States, to go for wars for the sake of Israel and take down any government that he deems as a potential threat to the state of Israel, whether it's Iraq or other countries in the region too. But clearly, Trump, he made a statement the other day during which he stated that we're not going to be imposing democracy at the point of a gun. In effect, that the United States isn't willing to play this police role globally. He has made previous criticism previously. Yes, contradicting statements too, absolutely. But it doesn't look like the United States is taking any concrete action to go and follow the ambitions of Benjamin Netanyahu and the plans to go and attack Iran. Why? Because he also sacked Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz was a very close figure to Benjamin Netanyahu. He recently also sacked two people from the U.S. National Security Council who were recruited and appointed by Mike Waltz. Again, another signal that he is shifting away from these people who seek wars, who seek problems, who seek more destruction and genocide. And he's clearly not interested in that at the moment. He wants to reach a deal. The deal isn't guaranteed. Of course, there are problems. There are things to talk about, but he doesn't want Benjamin Netanyahu going and carrying out an attack against Iran. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu is not toning it down. Why? Because the United States left the Red Sea. The United States participated and established the genocide coalition in support of a genocidal entity. They led it eventually only with the United Kingdom, by the way, in the Red Sea. Ansarullah in Yemen managed to split the United States from Israel in the Red Sea. That's a massive accomplishment from Yemen. Now, Israel is stepping up and carrying out more attacks against Yemen, against the airport, against the Hodeidah port, against other locations in Yemen too. But Benjamin Netanyahu, despite the fact that the attacks that are being carried out against Israel now outside of the Gaza Strip are primarily coming in, or only coming from Yemen, no other front is open at the moment, he is not saying that Yemen is the side that is responsible for these attacks, and he is still blaming Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu is saying Yemen is just a symptom. Iran is the cause behind all of this. As we can see in this report here, the Houthis are just a symptom. Iran is responsible. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the attack in Yemen, issued a statement in parallel with the hearing of his trial. The Air Force attacked again in the airport of Sana'a, which is controlled by the Houthi in Yemen. We act according to simple principle. Whoever harms us, we will harm him. Whoever does not understand this by force, they will understand by even greater force. But as I have said more than once, the Houthis are only a symptom. The main force behind them is Iran, and it is responsible for the aggression emanating from Yemen. That means Benjamin Netanyahu is not toning it down, and he is clearly signaling that he might do something against Iran. Now, of course, how effective, that's a separate story. Israel failed miserably in its 2 attacks against Iran. The one that took place in October was thwarted, and Iran successfully took it down. Israel didn't even dare to go next to the Iranian airspace. They weren't even over the Gulf. They were only in the Iraqi airspace that the United States forces use, and they carried out attacks against Iran from there, only for the Iranian Air Force air defense systems to take all of the Israeli terrorist regime's missiles very, very effectively by their own air defense systems, and with air defense systems that they might have from other countries too. Now, moving on to Yemen, Israel and Yemen, tensions have been rising between the two. Yemen, Ansarullah, they have been the only front that was open for the entirety of this genocide. They participated very shortly after October the 7th, and they declared that they will be attacking Israel and Israeli interests in the Red Sea. They constantly expanded their reach up until they said, and they constantly repeat this, Israel stops the genocide inside of the Gaza Strip and lifts the siege of the people in Gaza. That did not happen, and Ansarullah in Yemen, they constantly attacked Israel even when they were very close to reach a negotiation deal. Previously, before the recent ceasefire took effect, the Ansarullah movement in Yemen, they were attacking Israel 1 day before the ceasefire took effect, because they said this is in support for the Palestinian negotiator, and we will be monitoring the implementation of the ceasefire, and if there are any breaches, we will attack Israel again. Now, Israel is carrying out more attacks against Ansarullah in Yemen, and they are now saying, well, confirming as well in Yemen, they targeted the last plane that they had in Yemen that was being used by Ansarullah. Now, Ansarullah, of course, they had a couple of clarifications, and they made several statements to clarify the position. They said that we still receive planes. Anything that was damaged will be repaired, and we will continue the attacks against Israel. As a matter of fact, one of their senior figures, Muhammad al-Bukhati, he had an interview with Al Arabi Network, and in which he said a couple of things. Why? Because the Israeli defense minister, genocide minister, Israel Katz, he said that they destroyed the last plane. And al-Bukhati said to that, responded by saying, we will destroy the last occupation. So they're saying they destroyed the last plane of Yemen. We say we will destroy the last occupation on earth, which is the state of Israel. A plane is nothing, according to him. We're running away from the torture of God. If we don't fight, we will be tortured by God. These people are faithful people and fight based on principle. The Gazans, we tell you, we won't leave you, and we will sacrifice everything for you. He said, the things that were hit, they will be replaced. We have been through this for 10 years in our war with Saudi Arabia. The airport was closed for 7 years previously. The airport can still be used and any damage will be repaired. And we will accept parts, if we accept flights from other parts too. Unfortunately, we're not getting any support from other Arab states. As a matter of fact, they participate in these crimes led by the United States. Plus, the airport links are through Jordan and Egypt. It's impossible to transfer any weapons anyway, as these airports are for civilian purposes only, and they travel through countries that have ties both with the United States and Israel. And it's impossible to carry out any weapons on them or anything of the sort. Again, that's a clarification, and that's debunking all of the myth that's being pushed or was pushed previously by the United States and is still being pushed by Israel, that the Sana'a airport is a hub of transporting weapons and what have you, because all of the flights go through Egypt and Jordan. Egypt and Jordan, both of them, have ties with the United States and with Israel too. And he finished it by saying there is a misunderstanding amongst some in the Arab world that we should not resist until we have similar power to our enemies. And to that he answered, we rely on God, and God's power is above the power of America. The Yemenis, these people are people of total, absolute faith. Their dialogue, the way they talk, is not like anyone else. You know, people tell you, oh yeah, we're not capable, and no financial interests that come and they'll do this. Yamal tell you, no, we're afraid of our creator if we don't attack, and from the hereafter. Whereas the other calculations are not really the same. Other countries, other Arab countries, they're calculating it based on, well, are we capable? Are we not capable? Can we do it now? Can we do it tomorrow? We're not really in a position, and we're weak, and the United States will destroy us, and. The list goes on. Now, clearly, Ansarullah, they said they will also escalate too. Said they attack the airport. We'll continue attacking the airport, shut down and destroy them as well, according to Al-Bukhiti. And they have been clearly implementing that time after time. They only escalate. Now, in Israel, they are saying now outright that this has been a defeat. This was a defeat. And the situation, it can no longer be whitewashed. And that's another article that the same person that I quoted previously, his name is Ben Caspit, had in this article here. While the residents in the settlement were still hiding in the military barracks, Netanyahu was already plotting the plan for the next day. In his case, the plan was survival and keeping himself in the chair, saying that 600 days we are unable to defeat Hamas. 600 days have passed and Benjamin Netanyahu isn't reaching a deal. The priority is to get a deal, even if we don't completely eliminate Hamas, the wishful thinking, of course. But more and more criticism is coming against Benjamin Netanyahu amongst the Israeli media circles, Israeli mainstream media. People are all of a sudden in Israeli mainstream media. By the way, for those of you who don't follow Israeli mainstream media, all of a sudden the suffering of the Gazan population is being made public. Previously, we used to see only the rubble and the after effects, right? Total destruction. But now they're actually showing some images about the suffering of the people, about the hunger, about the things that the people suffer from day after day. Now that could be a way in which the Israeli media is applying pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu's government, because like Ben Caspit in his report said, in his article said, this is the worst defeat in Israeli history. This is the worst defeat in our history. We haven't been through anything like that. Previously, we took down 6 Arab armies in 6 days, and now we are unable to take Hamas in Gaza or the Palestinian resistance in Gaza after 600 days. We failed miserably. This is a huge defeat. So this could be an attempt to apply more pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a deal. Now, talking about the deal, there were several reports that Hamas accepted a new proposal that Steve Witkoff brought to light. This deal was supposed to be a deal that Israel saw. It's not the same deal that they spoke about a few days back. However, we're clearly talking about something new, something we haven't seen before. So there were a couple of reports. This was one of them here. Behind Witkoff's statement on a new document for a deal and Smotrich's warning, I will not allow it. And we will get to the fact that Smotrich is saying, I will not allow it, and how that could really mean that there is something actually happening. Otherwise, the finance minister wouldn't really say that and wouldn't be feeling under pressure to say it. Trump's envoy updated on new terms document shortly after Hamas updated on an agreement with him. Sources who spoke with Witkoff were impressed. The US will do anything for a deal. And then the finance minister was quick to warn Netanyahu against a partial deal. Saar sent a counter message. That's the foreign minister. Do not give in to political threats. What is known about the outline formulated behind Israel's back? So they're confirming that this was formulated behind Israel's back. That's an Israeli website. It was one of the biggest websites in Israel, confirming that this has been behind Israel's back, dealt between Hamas and the American representatives. So Israel is out of the picture in terms of this new proposal. This proposal has only been done by Steve Witkoff and by the Palestinian resistance delegation. Israel has had nothing to say in this deal, and the Palestinians, they have been talking with the Americans for quite a long time. So what's about this deal? Well, that's where things get a little bit even more trickier. Why? Because not a lot has been published about the deal, but some of the leaks that were out recently spoke about a temporary ceasefire and then a long-term ceasefire, a peaceful solution. Witkoff would be overseeing this agreement. This was a demand coming from the Palestinian resistance. Witkoff will make sure that it is enforced and will make sure that the Israelis continue with the next phase. So we're talking about certain guarantees. And in Israel, they're saying that the United States is using kind of sneaky terms to try and convince Israel to go in. Behind the scenes, according to this report, and behind Israel's back, there is an agreement in principle between Hamas and Steve Witkoff without Israel knowing the details. This is something important. And again, in Israel is trying to say that the United States is kind of trying to force Israel to go into this agreement. And according to this report too, sources who have in-depth knowledge are saying that it appears to be that Donald Trump is sick from the Israeli management of the war in Gaza, and he wants to get this over and done with. Donald Trump has had enough of Israel. He's sick of all of this, and he wants to get it over and done with without necessarily telling them anything, but only speaking with the Palestinian resistance through a Palestinian-American mediator, reaching a deal that he won't give Israel the whole details of, and force Israel to go into this deal. Of course, how likely will that be? It would really highly depend on the pressure that is going to be implemented by the United States against Israel. That's a very big thing. Now, another sign that there is something, that there's some pressure, and that Benjamin Netanyahu is considering something, is the fact that the finance minister, Smotrich, said that I will not allow a partial deal. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich referred to the new outline for a new deal initiated by the U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, which he said he would deliver soon. He said that we need to continue tightening the noose around Hamas' neck and force it into a deal of complete surrender with all of the hostages at once. He said it would be delusional fully to release pressure now and sign a partial deal that would give it oxygen and a lifeline and allow it to recover. I will not allow such a thing to happen, period. Is that a threat that he would resign? Maybe. However, these people are liars. They're immoral. The only person who resigned previously was Ben Gvir. Smotrich tried to legitimize the first phase of the ceasefire. He might do the same thing again if it suits him, because both him and Ben Gvir know that once they're out of this cursed government, well, the most cursed, because we're talking about an Israeli government here and all of them are cursed, they're not going to come back to power. These people are going to be out because they have been tried and tested, and they're losing in the Israeli polls. So if we have an election tomorrow, Smotrich might not pass the threshold to have anyone in the Israeli Knesset, let alone being in the Netanyahu government. And they know this reality, but they try and extract as much as possible from Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu, he might go into something because he knows that it's soon going to be inevitable that his government is going to collapse. Because of the Haredi movement, that's it. In his government, he's going to have this new conscription move happening with his government that will start enforcing more things. They previously stated if one of the community gets imprisoned for not attending or not going to the Israeli army, the government will collapse within hours. And then they threatened that they will leave Israel en masse. We're talking about 1.2 million people. So Netanyahu clearly has a plan B already now, more fragile than what he has now. However, he knows that it's about to end. If someone's about to leave the government, if all of the pressure is adding up, he knows very well that he never wanted a government with Smotrich and Ben Gvir, and he only went with them because they were the only people who would accept a government with him. This means that he might actually go on an actual deal to try and reach a ceasefire, especially again also because of the continued pressure coming from the United States and the unbelievable heroism of Gaza. Unbelievable. I mean, these people going through all of this and still surviving and sticking to their land and not fleeing, despite reports that there were options for them to leave. All of that is very significant at the end of the day. So, will Benjamin Netanyahu accept this deal? It's not about whether Benjamin Netanyahu accepts this deal or not. It's about how much pressure the United States actually puts on Benjamin Netanyahu, because if Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to reach a deal, he could have reached a deal several months back. As a matter of fact, he could have reached a deal over a year ago because he was guaranteed a safety net from the opposition in Israel. Now, the fact that he might actually lose his coalition, that he might actually collapse, the government might collapse, he's looking at a way where he might have to or be forced to go into a temporary ceasefire. Also added by the pressure of the families of the prisoners of war, they're escalating their tone lately, blaming the government of not only murdering their loved ones in Gaza, but also implementing the Hannibal Directive outright. They're saying all of that. And if such a deal comes to light, it will be the temporary initial phase that will lead to a final and long stand or a longer temporary ceasefire, permanent ceasefire agreement guaranteed by the United States. Hence why Donald Trump was saying, we want to control Gaza, we want to control Gaza. That might have something to do with it. In the first part of that ceasefire that reports are saying is going to be about 70 days, anywhere between 60 to 90, but lots of reports repeated the number 70. In the first 10 days, 5 Israelis who are alive will be released alongside 5 bodies, and the final day, another 5 will be released alongside 5 bodies, leaving, of course, over half of the total number of those who remain now in Gaza held by the Palestinian resistance. They still will be held by the Palestinian resistance up until the final phase is going to be done. These are the thick lines. The details are, of course, the aid, 1,000 trucks a day, then the talks about the rebuilding, a new administration, technocratic government, a long-standing solution. All of that comes after this initial temporary ceasefire comes in with the US guarantees to force Israel to end the war completely. And again, a lot of it is in the hands of the United States administration. So if the United States administration decides to apply enough pressure to the level where it would force Benjamin Netanyahu and his government to go into a ceasefire, they will.